I've always preferred vintage Heuer watches over Tag Heuer. Unfortunately, they're becoming increasingly rare to come by. A few years ago, I came across the Heuer CS3110. It's a 90s reissue of one of their popular Carrera Chronographs from the 60s. I found this version very faithful to the watches I was originally interested in. I quite liked the case size of 36mm and the fact that it reads Heuer rather than Tag Heuer on its dial. I did try on the black dial version as well, which is the reference CS3110, which was the same size as this, but somehow due to the darker color, it made out to appear a bit smaller on my wrist. It actually ended up looking like a mini Speedmaster, and I already have the Speedy in my collection. Anyhow, the white dial was what I was looking for. Actually, it would have been ideal if I could get a Panda dial or even a reverse Panda dial, but those are nearly impossible to come by. This version of the Heuer Carrera has certain interesting characteristics, like the blue markers around the circumference of the dial that separates the 60 seconds into 100 parts. I believe it's called the decimeter, although I'm not quite sure what it really does. My neo-vintage journey began with this 1995 model. The watch also comes with a Heuer signed buckle that is really nicely finished. The crown too is signed. As you can see, the plexiglass is a little domed and has a slight raise to it. The hour hand seems to have a few spots on it due to aging, because of course these things happen with time. The watch is paired with our popular caramel vintage stitch strap that has over time as well become darker, nicely complementing the age of the watch. In summary, this beautiful Heuer Carrera has a very old school and romantic appeal. I do like watches like this because they're quite elegant and design oriented. Personally, I think Heuer does the best looking vintage chronographs. Not just vintage chronographs, but their watches in general always seem to look better when they just say Heuer on the dial rather than Tag Heuer. When it comes to watch designs, the 1950s and 60s were really the golden era. This period seems to have produced so many beautiful, well-designed and perfectly proportioned watches. A true marriage of form, function and elegance. Here, of course, I'm talking about a watch from the 90s, but this particular model is an exception. Being a like-for-like reissue, it really captures the essence of watchmaking from a few decades before its time. Its movement as well is relatively newer. It's still 27 years old, but it does not cause me to worry about when I wear it, unlike if it was a watch from the 1960s. And at the same time, it also gives me a sense of enjoyment to be wearing a watch with such a classic design and that is so distinctively 60s. Heuer did a brilliant job making a faithful reissue of the original, something I wish more brands would do. Omega did it as well with the Trilogy watches a few years ago, and I really applaud them for it, because that is how a reissue should be done. I've seen too many times when brands try to incorporate modern elements with older watch designs, and we end up getting neither. A better choice would be to recreate something they already have from the past, and that was already an icon in its own right. Although it might seem like a lazy way to do things because they didn't really design anything new, just simply selected something from their archived catalogs. But if the archives are so rich in history, design, and horological significance, then why not?